Nathan Cooper.
My sister, you
That woman screaming across a courtroom is Strawberry's family. And the man they are pointing at is the one who kept her wrapped in plastic inside a fridge in his own bedroom for almost a week while he sat at the kitchen table and watched television. He had a fan pointed at that fridge to push the smell around. What her people did not know yet is the note he tucked inside with her body. 3 little words that tell you everything about the kind of man he was. Watch the moment the reporter lays out what police actually walked into that night.
Police saying today that 40-year-old Sherbert Maddox, known to many as Strawberry, was shot and then wrapped in blankets and saran wraps, then placed into a refrigerator, all by her own boyfriend.
And that is only one of the 3 women we are sitting with today, because there is another one whose ending got caught on camera in the middle of a busy Detroit street, with officers screaming for a passenger to get out of a truck.
Sir! Get out!
3 women with 3 men who claimed to love them in different homes that turned into something out of a nightmare. But before we get into Strawberry's story, let us start with this one, because the man in that Detroit truck told the whole city he was a changed man right up until the day they found what was left of his wife.
So y'all, I was bored. Up don't get mad because I won't be still. I'm ADHD, How you tell an ADHD autistic nigga to be still? How can I be still? It hurts to be still. People like me, we hurt when we be still. It's like it's an ache. Like your body just be moving, man. You know what I'm saying?
This is a razor blade.
Okay, I'm gonna be still for that. I'm gonna be still for that. I don't want you to cut me.
His name was Tony Roy, and for a while there, he had a lot of people believing him. Tony Roosevelt Roy III was born on April 26, 1979. A big man at 6'6" and 270 pounds, covered in tattoos, and by the time he was a grown adult, he had built up a record that most people could not even wrap their heads around. We're talking about at least 17 felony convictions in Michigan, running from 1998 all the way up. And these were not small things. His sheet included multiple armed robberies, assault with intent to rob while armed, kidnapping, weapons charges, and fleeing from police. Some of those robberies carried sentences of 8 to 20 years each. This was a man who spent most of his adult life either locked up or on his way back. But here's the thing that makes Tony different from your average career criminal. When Michigan let him out on parole on June 30th, 2022, he did not come home quiet. He came home loud, and he came home selling a story. He got on Facebook and told anybody who would listen that prison had made him better, that he had found God, that he had turned into a businessman, and that he was about to show the whole city of Flint what a real comeback looked like. Listen to how he told it, fresh out and already flashing.
So, yeah, you know what I'm saying? And so, they talk about blessings, and they talk about thanking God. Like, I don't cherish money. One thing about me, I don't cherish money. I'm always getting some money. I came home $100,000 up. $100,000 up. I came home with this, right? Because I saved my money. I always been a businessman. And I studied what businessmen do. I watched my brothers and them think. I watched Dink and them watch from the prison. I watched them get money over and over and over again, keep businesses going. Because we do not give up. We don't refuse to lose, no matter what. And guess what? I ain't worried about nobody robbing me. Somebody say, oh, Tree, you shouldn't be doing that.
That was the pitch. $100,000 in his hand, a truck to show off, and a mouth that never stopped moving. He wanted everybody to see the transformation, so much so that he even started his own little talk show every Wednesday, where he sat there and told women how to raise their sons and how to spot a good man. He talked about mental health in the community. He talked about being a leader and a father. He preached to mothers about not raising soft boys, about teaching young men to respect women, about protecting the community. He built this whole public face of a man who did wrong and came out the other side wiser. Now hold that image in your head, a man lecturing an audience of women about respecting women, and then remember what he was actually capable of doing to the woman who married him. The hypocrisy is almost too big to take in. The same mouth that gave advice about protecting women was attached to a man who would take his own wife apart. The gap between the sermon and the truth is the exact reason nobody saw it coming. And a lot of people bought it because he was charming and he was confident and he said all the right words. Watch him sell that hustle mentality to the camera because this is the exact energy he ran on.
I'm showing people what success look like when you work. Even though I came home and did 8 years, you hear me? I did 8 years for a simple mistake that I did. But I still didn't stop working. I still didn't stop being a father. I still didn't stop being a leader. I still didn't stop being a business owner, even when I was in prison.
What people did not see behind the confidence was a man who had been fighting to get out for years and who felt like the world owed him. His release had actually been delayed because of the pandemic, and in a letter he wrote from prison, he asked whether he had been left to die inside, which tells you the pressure he was carrying. Once he got home, the reality of being a felon with 17 convictions hit him hard. He tried to buy a house in Flint and got cheated out of thousands of dollars in the process, the kind of setback that would test anybody. So on one side, you had a man performing success on Facebook every day, and on the other, you had a man who was broke, freshly out, and angry that his second chance wasn't going the way he promised the world it would. That gap between the show and the reality is where the danger lived. One of the people who bought the show was Shauna. Shauna Roy, born Shauna Williams in 1982 in Saginaw, Michigan, was pretty much the opposite of everything Tony had ever been. Her best friend of 30 years, a woman named Dominique Vaughn, who met her back in 6th grade science class, remembered her as the type of person who would help absolutely anybody and greeted everyone with a warm, "Hey honey." She was bubbly, always smiling, always laughing, the kind of woman who sent her people uplifting texts first thing in the morning just to make sure they started the day right. She worked as a production operator at Next Year Automotive, was raising 2 sons, and had this dream sitting in her heart that tells you exactly who she was. She wanted to open an adult foster care facility so she could take care of people who had nowhere else to go. She organized giveaways for the homeless. She believed in second chances, and that belief is the exact thing that a man like Tony knew how to use. To understand why Shauna gave a man like that a chance, you have to understand how she was built. She grew up in Saginaw, Michigan as the youngest of 3 siblings in a close family, graduated from Saginaw High School in the year 2000, where she cheered and served on student council, and then went to school for caregiving and social work, because helping people was not a hobby for her, it was the whole point of her life. She was the friend who supported the struggling kids in school and grew into the woman who ran giveaways of hats and gloves for the homeless in the brutal Michigan winters. Her sons were her world, one of them around 16 and the one around 7 at the time, and even in her hardest stretches, she put them first. This was a woman who genuinely believed that people could be redeemed, that a rough past did not have to become a rough future, and that everybody deserved somebody to bet on them. A man who spent his whole time in prison rehearsing the story of his own redemption could not have found a more perfect audience.
Chasing chicken, still supporting the goal of this clothing line. You feel me? Chasing chicken while he done blessing me again. You feel me? Been me the whole year. I've been home a year. I celebrate being free for a year in 2 days. Look at the dope I got. Look at this. Hold on, I got another one. I got another one. You know, my niggas look at it. I got another one. We got that shit on us, man. Yeah, matching, man. Feel me? Yeah, my colors too, Wally. You so dang on this. I think these the hardest ones, bro.
They met online back in 2020 while he was still locked up, and he fed her the same story he fed everybody else, that he was reformed, that he had changed, that all he needed was somebody to believe in him. Shauna believed in people for a living, so of course she believed in him. They got married on July 22, 2022, less than a month after he walked out of prison. To her, it felt like a fresh start and a leap of faith. To the people who loved her, it felt like a red flag they could not talk her out of. It did not take long for the mask to slip. Behind closed doors, the reformed businessman from the Facebook videos turned into something controlling and jealous. He started demanding a full account of where she went and who she talked to, accusing her of cheating, picking apart her character, until the woman who used to light up every room went quiet and heavy. Her friend Dominique noticed the change immediately because the daily good morning texts started to feel forced and the laughter dried up. Shauna was slowly being cut off from the people who cared about her, and that is the oldest trick in the book for a man who wants to control somebody. The tighter he squeezed, the more she started planning her way out. By the spring of 2023, the marriage was falling apart in a way you could see from the outside. Tony filed for divorce on May 15, 2023, which is a wild thing when you look at what came next. On top of that, he had already caught new heat while on parole. Back in March of that year, he was charged with aggravated domestic violence, torture, and a stack of gun offenses against another woman. And while that case got dismissed when the victim would not testify, the pattern is impossible to ignore. The state responded by putting him on a GPS tether, an ankle monitor that tracked his every move. Shauna, meanwhile, had made up her mind. She confided in the people closest to her that she was done, that she was leaving him and heading back home to Saginaw where her family was waiting. By some accounts, she was only about 72 hours away from getting out safe. She never made it, and the reason she never made it starts with that ankle monitor coming off. Everything about the summer of 2023 tells you Tony was watching the clock on that tether like it was the only thing standing between him and whatever he had planned. On July 12th, he hopped on a Facebook video, shirtless in the kitchen, bragging that he was about to be free of the monitor in a matter of days and hyping up a big welcome home party at a Flint nightclub where he planned to finally show off the rap skills he said he built in prison.
So, man, it just feel good, man. I'm just happy to be off paper. Finally, you know what I'm saying, getting off this bull. You know what I'm saying?
I'll be there in the morning dropping it off.
You know, just feel the feeling of being free. You know what I'm saying? No man should be held captive. You know what I'm saying? You don't know what that like to be locked in the house all day. They tell you can't go nowhere. Yeah, man, I feel good, man. I ain't never accomplished nothing in my life. I ain't graduated high school. I ain't winning no championship in basketball, and I love it. I ain't never won a championship. Like, when we'd be like, damn, we was at a school, you know what I'm saying, the joint, yeah. In prison, I won like 3 or 4 of them. We be in that bitch playing bully ball. So it really ain't no championship like your high school days. I miss all that shit being locked up. You know what I'm saying? And now I get the chance to experience this shit. Treat is living. Living. Let me see, you got my haircut right?
The scary part is that by the time he posted that celebration video, police believe Shauna was likely already dead. Investigators estimate she was killed around July 11th, the same day he was listed as a parole absconder. So the man dancing shirtless in the kitchen, talking about his big comeback, may have been standing just a few feet away from what he had already done. The tether officially came off on July 13th, and now nobody could track where Tony Roy was. Around this same time, something started feeling wrong to the people who loved Shauna. Her best friend Dominique had last seen her at a dinner on July 7th, and by July 12th, Shauna went silent, which was completely out of character for a woman who checked in every single day. Then the texts that did come through from Shauna's phone started sounding off. The wording was strange, calling people honey in a way that did not match how she actually talked, claiming she was fine and just busy. This is one of the most unsettling details in the whole case, because if the timeline investigators built is right, those reassuring little messages telling everybody she was okay were most likely being typed by the very man who had already killed her. He was using her phone to buy himself time and keep the family calm while he handled the body. To the people who knew her voice, those messages did not read like Shauna at all. Something about them felt manufactured, too flat, too off. They read like somebody else was holding her phone, and the gut feeling those friends had turned out to be exactly right. The family started calling for help, and this is where the system moved slower than it should have. Burton police did multiple welfare checks at the apartment over the next few days, a unit at Kings Lane Apartments that wasn't even leased in their names, which is a detail that matters because a home that isn't officially tied to anybody is a home that's easy to disappear inside of. Each time officers came by, they ran into Tony, and each time he had an answer ready. He told them he hadn't seen Shauna in a couple of days, kept his story vague, and gave them just enough to keep them from pushing further. Under the law, a locked door and an evasive man are not automatically enough for police to force their way in, so every time they left. Picture that for a second. Officers stood on the other side of a door with a woman's remains inside, talked to the man who put her there, and walked away because the rules said they had to. Shauna's mother called 911 and reported that nobody had heard from her daughter in 3 days, which for a woman who texted her people every single morning was an emergency all by itself. And still, the doors stayed closed. Then, on the evening of July 15th, the mother called back with the detail that finally cracked the case wide open. She reported a smell of death and bleach coming from that apartment. That combination is its own kind of horror, because the smell of death told police something had died in there, and the smell of bleach told them somebody had been trying to scrub it clean. It is the scent of a crime and a cover-up happening in the same rooms. That was the thing that finally gave officers the cause they needed to stop knocking and start acting. When officers finally got inside around 6:30 that evening, the odor hit them before anything else did. What they found in that bathroom is the kind of thing that stays with a person forever. Shauna Roy, 41 years old, had been dismembered, her remains placed in garbage bags and left in the bathtub. Technicians could tell from the scene that she had likely been killed elsewhere and taken apart afterward because there was very little blood. The reporter said it as plainly as it can be said.
Continuing coverage, a man accused of and dismembering his wife by police. Burton police say it started Saturday when officers responded to a welfare check at Kings Lane Apartments.
Investigators say they received reports of a woman inside who was dead. TV5's Lanita Brooks joins us live from Burton with details. Lanita?
Burton police responded to Kings Lane Apartments for a welfare check just after 7 o'clock Saturday night. It was then when they arrived that they found a horrifying crime scene. They discovered 41-year-old Shauna Roy had been completely dismembered. Her body had been placed in garbage bags and set in the bathtub. It was then when officials determined her husband, 44-year-old Tony Roy, had her body and left it in the apartment. A warrant for his arrest was issued Monday, and that same day, Michigan State Police attempted to arrest Roy in Detroit during a traffic stop at about 11:40 that night. Roy then met officers with a firearm, pointing the gun on himself and then at a female passenger who was in the car with him. Officials say as he was pointing the gun towards that passenger, he was shot by multiple troopers him on scene. As for the passenger, MSP says she suffered minor injuries from glass fragments and she will be okay. And anyone who has any additional information is urged to contact police as this investigation is still ongoing. We're live in Burton. Lanita Brooks, WNEM, TV5.
Investigators believe the killing itself happened somewhere else and that the dismemberment came afterward, done with tools like a knife and a saw, which is a cold and deliberate thing that takes time and a steady hand. This was not a heat-of-the-moment loss of control. Somebody made a series of choices, step by step, over days, to take a human being apart and hide the pieces. And the whole time, the man responsible was posting videos and planning a party. Shauna's identification, her phone, and her purse were later found in Tony's vehicle, tying him directly to it all. And a witness reported that Tony had actually confessed the killing to somebody. A news report spelled out the warrant against him. A warrant went out for his arrest on July 17th for open murder and mutilation, and by then he had already run, driving Shauna's own car toward Detroit. The hunt for him did not last long, and the way it ended got captured on police camera. Late that same night, around 11:40, Michigan State Police spotted Tony riding as a passenger in a black Ford Explorer on Telegraph Road near 7 Mile Road. Troopers moved in with a full perimeter, an armored vehicle, guns drawn, calling for him to give up over a loudspeaker and telling him negotiators were on the way. The woman driving the truck later said she had given him a ride without knowing what he had done, which means she had a killer sitting in her passenger seat and had no idea. As the officers closed in, Tony grew hostile and ducked behind her, using her body to shield himself. Instead of surrendering, Tony put a gun to his own head first, telling the woman in the car he could not go back to jail, threatening to unalive himself right there. Then he turned that gun on her, using her as a shield, and when he aimed it at her head, the troopers opened fire in a burst that lasted only a few seconds.
Your discretion is advised.
Hey, watch her. Hey,
Watch her.
Hey, come from this side. Hey,
Guns to his head.
hey, they gotta come from this side. Yeah,
Yeah.
let's stay there. Let's stay there.
Roll down the window and put the gun outside the car. Roll down the passenger window and drop the gun outside the car.
Sir. Sir.
Get her out! Get her out! Get out! Come on! Come on! Come on! Come on! Come on! Get medical rolling! Get medical rolling! Get her medical! Hey! He's down! Unresponsive!
The passenger survived with only minor cuts from the shattered glass. Tony Roy died right there in the street, which means he never sat in a courtroom, never answered a single question under oath, and never gave Shauna's family the one thing they wanted most, an explanation.
Well, know what for? A 41-year-old man is following a shooting in Saginaw this morning. Saginaw police and Michigan State Police received the report just before 6. The shooting happened on North 12th Street near Jane Street. When officers got to the scene, they found the 41-year-old man had been shot. Police say they arrested a suspect in connection to that shooting. The investigation is still on.
Burton's police chief summed it up by saying Tony knew exactly how it was going to end. The man who spent a whole year telling the internet he was reformed left behind a dead wife, 2 boys now being raised by their grandmother, and a dream of a foster care home that will never get built. Think about the cruelty of the timing here. Shauna had already decided to leave. She had already told her people she was going home to Saginaw. By some accounts, she was around 72 hours from walking out the door and starting over, which means she did not die because she stayed. She died right at the exact moment she was finding the strength to go. That is a pattern that shows up again and again in these cases, that the most dangerous time for a woman is the moment she decides to leave, because that is the moment a controlling man feels his grip slipping. Her friend Dominique put it as plainly as it can be put, that Shauna did not deserve this and had so many dreams left to live. And the video footage of that Detroit standoff even caught the terrible final beat of it all.
I just know it sounds quite crazy if you think about it. Mike and Glenda, like you said, this all started in Burton, which is just outside of Flint, on Saturday night. We do have to warn you, the details of this case are quite disturbing. Police were called to Kings Lane Apartments on the report that the body of a woman was inside one of the units. When officers arrived, they found garbage bags with human body parts inside the bathtub. Police say 44-year-old Tony Roy had killed his wife Shauna, dismembered her body, and left the remains in the apartment. Burton police issued a warrant for Roy's arrest on Monday. Just hours later, Michigan State Police tried to arrest him in Detroit near the intersection of Telegraph and 7 Mile. He was driving with a woman he knew. When he stopped the car, troopers saw him pointing a at himself and then at the woman in the passenger seat. When he pointed the gun at that woman, again, troopers opened fire. Roy was pronounced dead on the scene. The woman he was with suffered minor injuries from glass fragments. The shooting is now under investigation by Detroit police and will be turned over to the prosecutor's office for review. But certainly, like we said, quite disturbing and just, I mean, crazy to think that a woman was cut up and then left in a bathtub in an apartment.
By her own husband.
Yeah,
Jeez.
writing.
Just horrific details.
Yeah.
Thank you, Carolyn.
That's our first woman, betrayed by a man who wore redemption like a costume and performed it for an audience right up until the end. Our second woman lived a whole world away in Rhode Island, but you're about to see how much these stories rhyme, because her killer also had a documented history of choking her and threatening her, and he also decided that hiding her body was easier than facing what he had done. The difference is that her killer didn't run from the police at all. He just sat in his apartment with the television turned up and her body in the fridge, waiting because he had already decided that if he couldn't trust anybody, then nobody was getting past his front door. This is Strawberry's story.
Our investigation is showing that he did have violent tendencies toward her in the past.
Sherbert Maddox, 40 years old, born around 1981 or 82 in Providence, Rhode Island, was the kind of woman a whole family orbits around. Everybody called her Strawberry, and if you ask the people who loved her, that nickname fit. Her younger sister, Nakia, remembered her as always happy, smiling, laughing, and having fun, the light of any party, a woman who loved music and loved to dance. Her daughter said her mother could make you laugh even when you were sad and was always there when you needed her. Her own mother stood in a courtroom and called her one of a kind. Listen to how her people talked about her outside that home after they found out what happened.
She was a princess. For real, she was a princess.
That's how the neighborhood remembers Strawberry, as a princess. Her family made a point of saying they wanted her remembered for who she was in life, not for the horror of how it ended. Her sister, Nakia, flew up from Tennessee and said she wouldn't leave Rhode Island until there was justice, and she put the grief into words that anybody who's lost somebody understands, that she can never get her sister back, and nothing on this earth could justify the way her sister died. Her mother, her daughter, her cousins, and her uncle all showed up for her, set up a memorial of candles and flowers outside the building, and stood in that courtroom carrying a pain you could feel from across the room. Her friends stood outside that home and begged for the community to do more to protect women like her. The friends saying more needs to be done to protect all women like Strawberry. Strawberry didn't even live full-time at the apartment where her body was found. That place belonged to the man she was seeing, and his name was Nathan Cooper. Nathan Cooper was 53 years old at the time, a man the neighbors around Parkus Avenue knew by the nickname Disco. On the surface, he was just an older guy in the Elmwood neighborhood, but underneath, he carried a criminal record and a temper that the people close to Strawberry had learned to fear. He was legally barred from even owning a gun because of a prior conviction, which is exactly what he ended up convicted of in this very case, 2 counts of possessing a firearm as a prohibited person. Yet he told investigators he carried a gun every day. Providence police put it plainly not long after the arrest that Cooper had shown some violent tendencies towards Strawberry in the past, and that came straight from her friends and family. The relationship was toxic in a way that had already gone physical more than once. What makes this case so chilling is that Cooper left a paper trail of his own hate. Back in January of 2020, he texted his own nephew and admitted that he had choked her ass, talking about Strawberry. Then, in October of 2021, he sent a run of messages to a friend that read like a warning nobody caught in time. In those texts, he tore her down with some of the ugliest language you can imagine, said he had already beaten her up after she smung a bottle at him, and wrote that he didn't know how much longer he could hold his anger. And then he signed off on it by swearing on his own mother that it wouldn't end well. When you read a man's private words months before he kills somebody, and he's basically narrating the ending, that's not anger, that's intention taking shape. On top of his own words, her family knew the danger. They told police the relationship was volatile, that Cooper was jealous, that he had put his hands on her before, and that at one point he had even pulled a gun on her. The police themselves confirmed after the arrest that multiple people who knew the couple described Cooper as abusive toward her, even though there had never been an official domestic call to that specific apartment. That's one of the quiet tragedies of these cases. The people around her knew. The danger was documented in text messages and family memories. The paper was there. It just never turned into protection in time. Strawberry had already decided to leave him, and that on-off nature of the relationship is something a lot of people misunderstand. From the outside, it's easy to ask why she didn't just leave and stay gone. But leaving an abuser is rarely a single clean moment. It's a series of attempts. And each time a woman pulls away, the man who needs to control her often gets more dangerous, not less. Everybody around her could see where this was heading. Her family watched it, her friends watched it, and still it kept pulling her back in. Domestic violence has a way of moving faster than the people trying to stop it, and it feeds on exactly the kind of isolation and fear that a man like Cooper worked to create. And there's a hard truth about guns in these situations that experts spelled out after her death.
We know that when there's a firearm present, that the chances for death increase significantly for someone who's experienced abuse by 9 times.
9 times more likely. Nathan Cooper carried one every day, and he was pointed at a woman he had already choked and beaten. All the pieces were sitting right there. What happened on the 16th of March 2022 was the moment all of it came together in the worst possible way.
We're hearing from one of the younger sisters of a 40-year-old woman police say was in Providence and found inside a refrigerator in a Parkes Avenue home. Police believe the man Sherbert Maddox was living with killed her. 12 News reporter Alexandra Leslie joins us live in studio now after speaking with Maddox's sister today. Alex?
Well, Shannon, Nakia Maddox told me she arrived in Providence after her sister's alleged 53-year-old Nathan Cooper was seen by a judge. The Tennessee resident says she doesn't plan on leaving until justice is served. Police say the body of 40-year-old Sherbert Maddox, known by close friends and family as Strawberry, was found in a horrific manner, wrapped inside plastic and towels inside a refrigerator. Her sister Nakia tells me it was their uncle who made the discovery.
Because somebody called my uncle and told him, hey, I think your niece is deceased or something's wrong with her. And my uncle ran and flew drive down here, and he knocked on the door and they would not open it for him, so he kicked in the door. And he seen his niece in there.
Police believe 53-year-old Nathan Cooper was responsible for Maddox's death.
And the fact that they left her like that, I could never get my sister back.
Through tears, Sherbert's younger sister Nakia told me she never thought she'd have to bury her sister.
You took a part of my family that we could never get back. Your day is coming.
Nakia is referencing Cooper, who police say Maddox was living with. What do you think happened between them?
I don't know. I don't have that answer.
However, Nakia believes more than one person had to be involved in her sister's death.
I want the world to know that justice will be served on my sister. Nobody had to do that girl like that. I don't care what she did. She did not have to go out like that.
Police stated that other charges were forthcoming, though it's not clear what those may be and if additional suspects will be part of those charges. Live in studio, Alexandra Leslie, 12 News.
We're tracking the very latest on the murder of a Providence woman.
Police believe the man living with Sherbert Maddox killed her. Maddox was found shot to death in a refrigerator. Now, police say 53-year-old Nathan Cooper allegedly murdered Maddox, but her sister believes more than one person is involved.
12 News reporter Alexandra Leslie joins us now after an emotional interview with Maddox's sister. Alex?
Well, Shannon and Mike, police stated other charges are forthcoming, though it's not clear what those may be and if additional suspects will be part of those charges. But Maddox's sister, who lives in Tennessee, tells me she's not planning to leave Rhode Island anytime soon. Nakia Maddox told me she arrived in Providence after her sister Sherbert's alleged 53-year-old Nathan Cooper was seen by a judge to face charges.
And justice will be served. And I promise I'm not going to leave this state and go back to Tennessee until something is done the right way.
Nakia and Sherbert's godmother, Eleanor, aren't convinced Cooper, who police say Maddox was living with, is the only one responsible.
We're going to hide to one person, but I pressed it in and I put it in. Nobody can do that. Nobody.
Police say Maddox's body was found wrapped inside plastic and towels inside a refrigerator. Her sister Nakia tells me it was their uncle who made the discovery after getting a call that something may be wrong.
And he knocked on the door and they would not open it for him, so he kicked in the door. And he seen his niece in there. And the fact that he left her like that, I could never get my sister back.
Nakia told me her sister, also known to family and friends as Strawberry, should not be remembered for her death, but for her life as a loving and happy person.
She was always happy, smiling, laughing, having fun, always the light of the party. She loved music. She liked to dance. She liked to have fun. That's how I'm gonna remember my sister.
Now, Nathan Cooper, the suspect, was ordered held without bail during his arraignment on Wednesday. His next court date has not yet been set. Live in studio, Alexandra Leslie, 12 News.
According to Cooper's own statements to police, he and Strawberry were in his third-floor apartment on Parkus Avenue that day, smoking a marijuana cigarette that was laced with crack cocaine. She got in the shower, and while she was standing in that shower with the water running, Cooper shot her one time in the chest with a .38 caliber revolver. He admitted the shot, and then he let her lie there. Think about the geography of that moment. A woman standing in a shower, unarmed, water running, completely vulnerable, and a man walking in with a gun he carried every day. There is no version of that scene where she is a threat to him. Cooper's story was that the whole thing was an accident, that he was standing beside the shower curtain, that he passed her a lit cigarette, that she splashed him with water, that he raised the hand holding the gun to wipe his face, and that it just went off. He even claimed he found the gun in the bathroom that day, which fell apart the second the court remembered he admitted carrying it daily, and the DNA on it was only his. A man does not accidentally find his own gun in his own bathroom. But the evidence tore that story apart at trial. Watch the reporter break down his own account of that day.
According to the affidavit, Cooper told police he shot his girlfriend, Sherbert Maddox, with a revolver while she was taking a shower. Cooper stated the two were smoking on a cigarette that was laced with crack. Cooper goes on to say he shot Maddox once in the upper chest, and she laid in the shower bleeding for almost 2 hours.
Almost 2 hours. That is how long the medical examiner and the affidavits say Strawberry lay there bleeding while Cooper did nothing. He had a phone within arm's reach. He had actually called 911 before for far smaller things in his own life, but this time he did not call. And the reason he gave later is the same reason her family would eventually shout at him in court. He said he did not trust the police. So instead of getting her help, he started covering it up. What Cooper did over the next several days is the part that shows you this was no accident and no panic. After she stopped breathing, he wrapped her body. Then he called a friend named James Myrick and asked him to bring over some shrink wrap. Using that plastic wrap along with towels, blankets, bedding, and a pair of blue latex gloves that carried only his own DNA, he shrouded her body in layer after layer. And then he did the thing that gave this whole case its name. He pulled the shelves out of his refrigerator, dragged that fridge from his kitchen into his bedroom, folded her wrapped body inside, tied the door shut with a cord, and pointed a stand-up fan at it to move the smell around. Tucked inside all that wrapping, investigators found a handwritten note. 3 words: "I don't trust you." For nearly a week, Cooper stayed in that apartment, kept using drugs, and lived a few feet from the fridge that held the woman he claimed to love. Let that sink in. He ate, he slept, he got high, and he did it all in a home where he had turned his own bedroom into a hiding place for a body. He even texted Myrick afterward and called Strawberry a piece of trash who ruined his life. Those blue latex gloves found in the wrapping carried only his DNA, even though he swore in court he never used them. One more small lie stocked on top of a mountain of them. Nothing about those days reads like grief or shock or an accident that got away from a scared man. That is not the behavior of a man who accidentally hurt someone he loved. That is a man who made a decision and then calmly cleaned up after himself, settling a score he had been writing about in text messages for years. The reason anyone found her at all comes down to family who refused to let it go. Strawberry usually talked to her people every single day, so when 3 or 4 days passed with no word, her uncle Marvin Maddox got a tip from a coworker that her niece might be dead and stuffed in a refrigerator in her boyfriend's place. In the early morning hours of March 22nd, Marvin and 2 women flagged down a Providence officer right there on Parkus Avenue and told them everything. The volatile relationship, the prior time Cooper pulled a gun on her, and their belief that her body was in that apartment. When officers got up to the 3rd floor landing, they did not need much convincing. There was a pungent odor consistent with human decomposition hanging in the hall. They knocked and announced themselves as police over and over with no answer, even though they could hear a television inside and watch the volume get louder. Then an officer saw Cooper peek out the window, look right at them, and duck back inside. The volume on that television was doing something eerie too, climbing higher and higher, almost like he was trying to drown out the sound of the police or the sound of his own conscience. Around 2:19 in the morning, after a lieutenant arrived and weighed the situation, they made the call to force the door with a battering ram. They found Cooper sitting calmly at his kitchen table as if it were any other night. A quick sweep of the place turned up no one else alive. In the bedroom, they found the refrigerator, clearly dragged out of the kitchen where it belonged, tied shut with a cord with a stand-up fan aimed right at it to move the smell around the room. When they pulled it open, the shelves had been removed to make space, and inside, wrapped in layer after layer, was Strawberry. On the counter sat a .38 caliber revolver with its cylinder swung open, and a shotgun was recovered too. This was the moment the family's worst fear became a confirmed fact. The medical examiner, Dr. Patricia Ojapira, ruled the cause of death a single gunshot wound to the left chest with a trajectory that traveled left to right and downward, and she ruled the manner of death a homicide. That downward path of the bullet became one of the biggest problems for Cooper's accident story. He got up in court and physically acted out his version, and when he mimed the moment the gun supposedly fired, his hand was pointing upward, which is the complete opposite of the downward path the bullet actually took through Strawberry's body. A man wiping water off his face with a gun in his hand does not fire a shot that travels downward into someone standing in a shower. The physical evidence called him a liar without saying a word. On top of that, a firearms expert testified that the revolver needed about 10.5 pounds of pressure to pull the trigger, which is nowhere near a hair trigger and very unlikely to just go off by itself. Add in the hateful texts, the failure to call for help, the wrapping, and the fridge, and the whole accident defense fell apart. At the arraignment, the courtroom exploded with the grief you saw at the very top of this video.
We'll get to those stories in a few moments, but first tonight at 6, a Providence man charged with brutally killing his girlfriend. Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight. I'm John DeLuca. Any troubling, of course, but police say the way this victim was found in this case was truly disturbing. ABC 6 News reporter Olivia DeRocha joined us live in Providence with those details. Olivia.
John, you're right, and that's exactly why we want to say some of these details may be extremely disturbing to some viewers, so just a warning about that. But police saying today that 40-year-old Sherbert Maddox, known to many as Strawberry, was then wrapped in blankets and saran wrapped, then placed into a refrigerator, all by her own boyfriend.
Nathan Cooper?
My sister, you An outburst in Providence District Court on Wednesday. Family of Sherbert Maddox shouting at the man accused of and her before putting her plastic-wrapped covered body in a refrigerator. The suspect, also Sherbert's boyfriend, 53-year-old Nathan Cooper, facing a judge for his arraignment, now formally charged with murder. Providence police say around 2:30 on Tuesday morning, friends and family of Maddox, also known as Strawberry, called police with concerns about her well-being. Inside the home at 43 Parkus Ave that the two shared, investigators finding Cooper and Maddox.
Mr. Cooper was taken in for questioning. We then obtained a search warrant, and Miss Maddox was found deceased in the apartment.
Police taking a rifle and a handgun from the home that they believe Maddox was with as early as Sunday afternoon.
She was a princess. For real, she was a princess.
Hours after Maddox's body was found, friends setting up a memorial outside the home on Tuesday while investigators still scoured the scene. The friends saying more needs to be done to protect all women, like Strawberry.
There are times where women, we don't want to come in our community because we don't feel safe. But why should that deter me if I feel I'm a victim or a target?
And Cooper did not enter a plea today in court, and he's being held tonight without bail. And this was the third homicide of the year here in Providence. For now, we're live in Providence. I'm Olivia DeRocha, ABC 6 News.
Cooper was charged, and after a 6-day jury trial in Providence County, he was convicted on May 15, 2023 of second-degree murder, discharging a firearm during a crime of violence resulting in death, and 2 counts of possessing a firearm as a prohibited person. On September 26th, the judge handed him 2 consecutive life sentences plus 2 concurrent 10-year terms, calling him an incorrigible reoffender and one of the most unsettling defendants he had seen in 37 years on the bench. Cooper mumbled an apology in court, saying he had done some things wrong that could have saved her life and that he missed her just like everybody else. Strawberry's family was not trying to hear a single word of it. To them, a man doesn't get to wrap a woman in plastic, stuff her in a fridge, leave a note calling her untrustworthy, and then stand up months later talking about how much he misses her. Her mother demanded to know why he did it and said he was going to get his. One relative shouted that they would see him in hell as he was led out of the room, and her sister told him plainly to remember that what goes around comes around. That courtroom rage you saw at the very top of this video was not for show. It was years of love and grief pouring out at the man who ended it all. His first shot at parole is not scheduled until the year 2076, which means Nathan Cooper is going to die behind bars. He did not go quietly, though. His lawyers fought hard to get the whole case thrown out, arguing that when police broke down his door without a warrant, they violated his constitutional rights, and that everything they found inside, including Strawberry's body, should never have been allowed at trial. It was a real legal fight that went all the way up to the Rhode Island Supreme Court, which in 2025 upheld his convictions and agreed that the officers had good reason to force their way in. One justice dissented and warned that letting police kick in a door based on a report that someone was already dead could chip away at everybody's protections, so it wasn't a slam dunk, but the majority sided with the officers who stood in that hallway, smelled what they smelled, and decided they couldn't gamble on the chance that Strawberry might still be alive inside. Cooper has kept pushing his appeals even after that, still insisting to this day that the gun just went off, still refusing to own what those 3 words in that note already told everyone about him. That's 2 women now, both killed by men who wanted to control them and then tried to hide what they had done. Both had families who saw the danger, both had partners with documented violence, and both ended up hidden away like objects instead of the people they were.
My hope is that it was just somebody laid down and died, that nobody killed anybody.
Our third woman is different in one painful way. Her name was Perry Mason. Perry Mason grew up in Kalihi, Hawaii, and there's a sweet little detail about her name that says a lot about her father. He named her Perry Mason, the classic lawyer character, because he wanted her daughter to stand for something. Back in Hawaii, she worked as a court reporter, and when she moved to Meriden, Connecticut in 2018 with her 2 young sons for a fresh start, she kept that same line of work as a state court monitor recording proceedings in family court. On the side, she ran her own eyelash business. She was tiny, about 4'11", and by every account, she was pure light. Watch how her coworkers remembered her after she was gone.
Always smiling. I never saw that girl frown, upset. She always walked in, ready to do her job.
Everybody who worked with her felt her presence, and when she was gone, they said the space she left could not be filled. Listen to a coworker try to describe what she meant to them.
She's so strong, she's so smart, she caught on to everything so quick, and she did it with a smile, everything she does, and I see her smile, and I'm gonna keep seeing her smiling.
She had picked up her whole life in Hawaii, where she grew up in Kalihi and worked in the courts, and moved thousands of miles to Connecticut specifically to give her 2 young boys a fresh start. That decision, made out of love, is what put her in the path of the man who would take her life. She was close with her family, especially her sister Val, and the 2 of them talked multiple times a day, which became important later. The man she moved in with in Connecticut was Jason Watson, and just like the other 2 men in this video, Jason came with a history that should have set off every alarm. Jason Darnell Watson was around 39 at the time, and a bail commissioner would later stand up in court and describe just how deep his record ran. His criminal history dated back 1998, with 17 priors and multiple convictions. One of those convictions was for sexual assault in the 2nd degree, and he was a registered sex offender who was actually on probation for that very charge when all of this happened. His record also included domestic violence and assault.
Watch the courtroom itself lay out the numbers.
And the bail commissioner noted that Watson has a criminal history that dates back 22 years.
17 priors, multiple convictions.
She did not have a big local network to fall back on. Her family was scattered across the country and across the Pacific, and her closest lifeline was a sister she called on the phone. That kind of isolation is exactly the environment where a controlling man thrives, because the fewer people around a woman, the harder it is for anybody to notice when something goes wrong. Jason worked at a textile recycling facility called Bay State Textiles in Waterbury, a place that is going to matter a great deal by the end of this, and some reports described him in a managerial role there. He and Perry had recently broken up after a string of heated, physical arguments, but they were still living together in the same West Main Street apartment, along with her 2 sons and his kids from another relationship. Anybody who has ever had to keep sharing a space with an ex knows how tense that can get. But multiply that tension by a man with a violent record and a sexual assault conviction, and you have a situation that was never going to end calmly. That kind of living situation, an ex you are scared of sleeping under the same roof, is a pressure cooker, and it blew on the 15th of August, 2019. That day, according to the arrest warrant, Jason choked Perry until she lost consciousness. When she came to, she reached out for proof and for help. She texted her sister Val photographs of her injuries, red dots around her eye, a fat upper lip, and redness on her neck. And she texted Jason himself a message to the effect of, "You almost killed me." A local report summed up that attack in one clean sentence.
Police say Watson choked Mason to unconsciousness during a fight about 2 days after they broke up. Her sister said that Mason texted her photos of injuries from that attack.
Those photos and that text are the kind of evidence that should have been a turning point. A woman who takes pictures of her own bruised face and sends them across the country to her sister is a woman who knows, on some level, that she may need proof one day. She was documenting her own danger. Sadly, Perry was hesitant to bring police into it right away, and it is worth sitting with why. Women in these situations often hold back for reasons that make complete sense from the inside. Fear of making him angrier, fear of not being believed, worry about the kids, worry about the roof over their heads. That hesitation is not weakness, it is survival math, and it is exactly why the people around a woman have to be ready to step in when she cannot. Because just 2 days later, in the early morning hours of August 17th, she vanished, and the digital trail Jason left behind reads like a horror movie. Cell phone location data and surveillance footage told investigators a story Perry could no longer tell herself. Just before 3:20 in the morning, her gray Volkswagen Jetta pulled up to Bay State Textiles, the closed facility where Jason worked, and Jason walked inside. Around 5:15, he was caught on camera walking around the building, and then the facility's own security system suddenly stopped recording and did not come back on until after 8 in the morning. A DNA sample taken from the power cord of that disabled camera system came back consistent with a single male, and Jason could not be ruled out. In other words, somebody turned the cameras off, and the evidence points at him. During that 3-hour gap in the footage, Jason did not lay low. He drove Perry's gray Jetta to a Walmart in Wallingford and went shopping. Listen to what the arraignment revealed he bought. 2 days after Miss Mason was last seen, Watson was captured at 2 different places on their surveillance videos. First, at the Wallingford Walmart, purchasing 2 bottles of lighter fluid. Lighter fluid, plastic sheeting, and a Minnie Mouse towel. A barcode from one of those lighter fluid bottles would later match a bottle recovered from a dumpster behind Bay State Textiles, and that Minnie Mouse towel would later turn up back at the Meriden apartment. On top of all that, investigators found that Jason had secretly installed a tracking app on Perry's phone and had searched online more than 25 times for ways to poison someone. This was a man tracking his ex like prey.
Meriden police are taking a new approach into the investigation of a mother of 2. Perry Mason was found last week. Police say her remains were found near a Waterbury textile facility where her ex-boyfriend Jason Watson worked. This morning, police put out a message on their Facebook page asking to speak with anyone who had an eyelash appointment with Mason 2 weekends ago. Jason Watson is currently facing domestic violence charges and is being called the prime suspect in the case.
Meanwhile, Jason played the part of a worried partner. He contacted Meriden police and suggested Perry might just be off staying with a friend because, in his words, she was mad at him. But the little things gave him away. He kept referring to Perry in the past tense, saying she was a good person, as if he already knew she was gone. When a police dog tracked a scent from her parked Jetta straight through the yards to the home and directly to Jason, officers described him as visibly shaking and crying, and he refused to give a formal statement. On the other side of the country, her sister Val got scared when the daily calls stopped, and using shared account access, she found something that chilled her to the bone.
After Perry didn't contact her sister Saturday, which is unusual for the pair that talk multiple times a day, Val checked Perry's call logs and found 2 calls to 911 lasting less than a minute each. That was about 12 hours after their last contact.
Dispatchers confirmed the calls came through, tried to talk, heard nothing, called back, and still got no voice on the line. Think about what those silent calls really are. A woman dialing the one number that is supposed to save her and not being able to say a word. Maybe she could not talk. Maybe somebody was standing right there. Either way, that was Perry reaching out one last time in the only way she could. And by the time anybody understood what those calls meant, it was already too late to answer them. Val formally reported her sister missing, and once police had the full picture, the choking incident, the injury photos, the silent calls, everything moved fast. On August 20th, Jason was arrested at the home on charges tied to the August 15th choking, including second-degree strangulation, assault, and unlawful restraint, plus a violation of his probation. Prosecutors called him the prime suspect in her disappearance right away. The very next day, August 21st, the search ended in the woods behind his job. Investigators from 3 different police departments combed the wooded area behind Bay State Textiles on Brookside Road, and what they found is the kind of thing that stays with the officers who see it. There were human remains hidden in 4 layers of overlapping garbage bags, with bone fragments in other bags and in metal cans, the remains charred and scattered. A lighter fluid bottle recovered from a dumpster behind the facility carried a barcode that matched the exact one Jason bought at that Walmart, and the Minnie Mouse towel from the same shopping trip turned up back in the Meriden apartment. Every purchase from that 3-hour gap in the footage came back to point at him. The medical examiner identified Perry through her dental records because there was little else left to identify her by. The findings were almost too much to say out loud. Her cause of death was ruled homicidal violence, and the sequence police laid out was that she was killed, her body was crushed, and then the remains were set on fire. The crushing injuries were consistent with an industrial compactor at the textile facility. Watch the reporter and prosecutor describe just how disturbing the warrant was.
I did get a chance to read the warrant. The allegations are very disturbing.
The warrant states the medical examiner believes Mason was. Then her body was crushed before being set on fire.
Even with all of that, the murder charge did not come overnight. Connecticut prosecutors wanted a case that would hold up, and building it took nearly 10 months of work across multiple agencies. It was led by a Meriden detective named John Femia, whose dedication to the case was later recognized by a state coalition against domestic violence, an honor that speaks to how much of this fell on the shoulders of investigators who refused to let Perry become just another missing person file. Finally, on June 16, 2020, almost a year later, a judge granted an arrest warrant charging Jason Watson with murder. At his arraignment, prosecutors called the killing extraordinarily heinous and depraved, pointed to his long criminal history, and described him as an extreme danger to the community. The judge agreed the risk was serious.
The court is going to leave the bond as set without prejudice, $3 million cash or surety.
Watson is due in court again July 17th. Even though Watson's attorney says his client does not have the capability of posting the $3 million bond, the judge ordered Watson to stay away from his now deceased girlfriend's 2 young sons.
That bond was set at $3 million, along with orders to stay away from Perry's 2 sons if he ever got out. His defense attorney pushed back the way defense attorneys do, calling the whole case circumstantial, arguing there were no eyewitnesses and that the forensic evidence was weak. And on paper, sure, nobody watched Jason kill Perry, but circumstantial does not mean thin. When you stalk the choking 2 days before, the injury photos, the tracking app, the surveillance of her car at his job in the dead of night, the disabled cameras, the DNA on the power cord, the lighter fluid, the plastic, the past tense slip-ups, and the remains found behind his own workplace, you are not looking at a coincidence. You are looking at a mountain, and eventually even Jason could not climb over it. There were other details that made his guilt hard to look away from. His own co-workers at the textile plant said he had been acting strange in the days after Perry disappeared, at one point telling another employee that something smelled burnt in the warehouse, and then walking that coworker out to the woods near the property, which left the coworker wondering when exactly Jason had been out in those woods to know anything about them. Perry's phone was eventually found hidden in a container underneath clothing inside the apartment. Even Jason's young daughter offered investigators a haunting little line, saying that maybe robbers had taken Perry away forever.
Piece by piece, the story built itself around him. The reporting from that period made clear he was the focus from almost the very beginning. Jason Watson is currently facing domestic violence charges and is being called the prime suspect in the case. While the legal process ground forward, Perry's family did everything they could to hold her sons up. Her sister Val traveled from Georgia and worked to gain custody so the boys could be surrounded by love, and the wider family, including a brother from Hawaii and Perry's father, rallied around them. The father, the same man who had named her daughter after a fictional champion of justice, flew in from overseas for a community fundraiser and thanked the community for showing up for a family that was not even from there. They set up a fundraiser they called Perry's Ohana, using the Hawaiian word for family, because that is exactly what they were trying to keep whole for those 2 little boys. For a few years the case sat, but the truth eventually caught up with him. On November 27, 2023,
Jason Watson pleaded guilty to murder. Then, on January 22, 2024, a judge sentenced him to 30 years in prison. Perry's 2 boys were placed with family, and her people from Hawaii, led by her sister, fought to surround them with love. Her father, the man who named her after a champion of justice, thanked the community that showed up for her. It is a small comfort, but at least Perry's case ended the way it should, with the man responsible locked away and forced to answer for it. There is another thread worth naming here, and it's about the systems that were supposed to catch this. Tony was a paroled violent felon with an ankle monitor. Jason was a registered sex offender on probation. Cooper was legally barred from touching a gun and carried one every single day. In every case, the warning signs were not hidden. They were on file, and the people around these women often knew the danger firsthand. The failure was never a lack of information. It was that the information never turned into protection fast enough. If you want to see how deep this pattern runs, look at another Michigan case that lawyers and reporters bring up alongside Shauna's. A man named Gregory Green had already killed his pregnant wife back in 1991, served around 16 years, and got paroled with the backing of a pastor who swore he was reformed. He married the pastor's daughter, presented himself as a changed man, and then, in 2016, he tortured his wife and killed all 4 children in the home. Same recipe and a documented history of lethal violence, a community talked into believing in reform, a new family, and then unthinkable damage done to the people who trusted him most. It is not identical to Shauna's story, but it is the same warning written in different handwriting. Here's the lesson, and it is a simple one. A person's past is not always just their past. When someone has hurt people before, especially the people closest to them, believe what the record is telling you. Choking, gun threats, and old charges are not phases somebody grows out of. They are patterns, and patterns repeat. All 3 of these women were kind, giving people who believed in the good in others, and there's nothing wrong with having a good heart. The problem is that predators look for exactly that kind of heart, because a woman who believes everybody deserves a second chance is a woman who will forgive the warning signs one too many times. So if you take one thing from all of this, let it be that choking is not a fight, a gun in the home is not a bluff, and a controlling partner does not get gentler once you try to leave. If a person in your life is scared of the one they're sleeping next to, take that fear seriously and help them get out while there's still time, because for Shauna and Strawberry and Perry, time is the one thing that ran out. Rest in peace to all 3 of them. If you have somebody in your life who keeps making excuses for a partner with a history like this, share this video with them, not to scare them, but to help them see the pattern before it's too late. It might be the thing that gets somebody you love to finally walk away.